All right, well, welcome back to SEAHAWKS Chat. So today, in this segment of Is It Worth Trading for This Player, I'm going to be talking about one player in particular. I'm sure people have probably heard about who I might be talking about already. They already have a suspicion. The one thing that is interesting is that this player has been on the trade rumor since the offseason. So I don't see why, but at the same time, I can. So before I dig down to it and see if it's worth trading for this player, I'm going to go and talk about him. So we're going to talk about defensive end for the Washington Commanders. Chase Young, sorry. Just blanked out. I apologize. Chase Young. So, Chase Young, 24 years old, 6'5", 265 pounds. The guy has been in the league already 3 years. 24 years old. Young. I'm going to emphasize that early on in this video. Young. Came from Ohio State University. In fact, his teammate was Draymond Jones. They both got drafted in the same year, 2019. Believe it or not. And then they played in 2020. Well, of course, he played for the Broncos, but you know what I mean. In any event, so I'm going to go ahead and just go straight to the facts. Like, I'm going to go ahead and whip out the statistics so we know what kind of player we're talking about, because I think it's best to just get it away now, because as I talk about his statistics right now, coming to what he was before, it's going to make a lot more sense to where this video is going to come around to. All right? So, in 2022, only played in 3 games. Understand. 5 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 0 forced fumbles, 0 tackles for loss, no, whatever. Only 3 games. No. He's just coming off of a torn ACL in 2021. All right. So 3 games. That's, in my opinion, it's just impressive he's coming back on the field already that short on a torn ACL. And yeah. So in 2021, he played 9 games prior to his torn ACL. Unfortunately, this doesn't sound so impressive, but he had 1.5 sacks, 26 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and more importantly, 2 pass deflects. All right, that's already 3 pass deflects in 2 years in 12 games. That's kind of not bad, especially if you are a defensive end. You're not really meant to do those things. You just naturally do it. So, those 2 years, he was 23 years old and 22 years old. All right? So, as he's coming in as a rookie in 2020, he's going to be 21 years old. He played 15 games, 7.5 sacks, 44 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles. Here's the kicker. 3 forced fumble recoveries and 1 touchdown. I should have dotted if he had any pass deflections. I don't think he had any pass deflections. Maybe that's why I didn't write it down. But still, impressive. That's quite impressive. That actually makes sense why he won Defensive Rookie of the Year. No problem. Now, here's his college numbers. I only picked 2 years. Of course, the 1 year is his most explosive year, his last year. So we're going to spend that one. 2019, he had 12 games, 46 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, 16.5 sacks, 3 pass deflected. I always say defense, but deflected. Wow. And here's the most crazy part. He had 7 forced fumbles. No, he didn't recover any of them, but 7 forced fumbles, that's a lot. Okay? So then in 2018, this was when he was, apparently in 2018, he had 2 ankle sprains on both his ankles. One was a high ankle sprain, one was a low ankle sprain throughout the season. So he was actually playing kind of injured. And this was also when apparently Draymond Jones was starting to shine and produce in Ohio State. So they were rotating him as a nose tackle and a defensive end. Crazy, right? So in any event, that year he still played 13 games, 34 tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks, 5 pass deflected. That's insane. It's like he has such a knack for being able to put his hands up in the air and being able to disrupt throwing lanes. And it's great because it also makes sense because he's really lengthy and tall for 6'5", and it really shows. If you see him on the field, he looks bigger than 6'5" in some cases, but he's not. I guess not, but he does look like it. Like I said, when I look at him, he looks almost similar to Jadeveon Clowney in terms of frame. Jadeveon Clowney is 1 inch taller than him and 10 pounds heavier, but about the same body stature length, like very long and tall, but big enough guys to run and be agile, but yet powerful. So let me go ahead and talk about his pros. These are some of his pros. Excellent pass rusher. One thing that he's, of course, noted for, especially in college, the last year in college, is his ability to use his hands to get to the quarterback. Once he puts his hands on the tackle, he does his signature rip and spins or does a spin move all around and just destroys the quarterback. And it's quick. But the one thing that does concern me is that, the ACL, it might be able to inhibit his entire burst. But I'm still a little bit optimistic about the knee. Because this is a player like Chase Young. It's not like this is a player like, I don't know, John Reed, the cornerback that we don't even talk about no more, who we picked up a long time ago, a couple years ago. Anyway, yeah, it's not like it's like him. This is Chase Young. So another thing that he's really good at, he's a hand technician. Wonderful hand placements, as I was explaining earlier. Once he's rushing, he knows exactly where to put his hands on the tackle or the guard, able to maneuver his way, get low, and either does the rip or does a spin, or even just kind of just leans his way out and just speed power, like it's kind of like a speed power rush, and tackles the quarterback. It's great. He's just such an instinctive pass rusher, and it's not even just that. He's doing this at a young age, quite young age, but it makes sense because again he's big enough to do it. He's 6'5", 265. Guy got enough man in him to do it, and that's just the way it is. Another thing to mention, I'm trying to see what I also read. Yeah, hands detection, great hands detection. Oh, throwing passing lanes, being able to put his hands out, and since he's able to put his hands out and disrupt passing lanes, that's what's really vital in today's NFL. Everyone's throwing. Everyone's like wanting a quarterback and receivers, and now slot receivers, just like I mentioned before, slot receivers actually matter because they throw it to them. That's why I was mentioning in my last video, Jake Bobo, there is some possibilities. But in any event, yes, with Chase Young, if he can just back up a little bit and kind of hone his, throwing lane deflection, or being able to actually track the quarterback and know where he's anticipating the throw and then block it right there on the line, that's more vital than you think. That's probably worth paying his contract, because it's kind of insane that if he has that ability and can probably hone it, especially Pete Carroll. If Pete Carroll can see that he can do that, and he can do that to the guy, and he's got Draymond Jones, excuse me, backing him up. Oh, man, there could be a lot of potential for Chase Young here in Seattle. And Seattle, that's the thing I love about Seattle. This culture accepts anyone. Look at Devin Bush. He's thriving here already. And he also came from an torn ACL. But I'm going to compare his success closer to Chase's later on in the video. But in any event, we're going to go into his cons. Here are his cons. He gets injured. Does get injured a lot. Again, he already had the torn ACL. He also had his ankles in 2018. Let me see what else. That was pretty much it. And he also had a groin injury in 2020. Two minor groin sprains, ankle sprains, or sprains. They're still injuries nonetheless. But of course, the major one, 2021, torn ACL, and I guess it was a grade 3. But there are some positives to when I was looking into it. Surgery and recovery went, quote, great from both doctors and him. So Young himself said that he felt great after the surgery, and he felt more mobile. You know, he can use his knee and started rehabbing. The rehabbing so far apparently was also great. So I don't know if he's saying that because that's a Dan Snyder PR thing or he genuinely means it. But when I was out there watching him on his all of 3 games of 2022, he had that knee brace and he was not trying to do as much as when I saw him do. The burst was not nearly there. That's also why that's a con, because he's not nearly with the if he currently still has that RG3 sleeve brace on, the burst is not going to be there. It's going to be tough for him to actually execute after he's done pushing off the line. He's going to rely a lot on power. And I also think that he took it really easy because he's just coming off of that injury. It's only been a year. And I'm just surprised they threw him out there. Sorry, they threw him out there in a year. That's what surprises me. The fact that he literally said, okay, I will. Because I personally have been like, no, give me almost a year and a half, maybe 2 years. That's probably the kicker for some torn ACLs. 2 years. Unless you're Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson, I don't know. He took a moose's knee and just surgically implanted it himself. But in any event, so here's some things I want to know in terms of trading for defensive ends. There's only been 2 significant trades that I can find of in the recent last 6-7 years. So number one was most recent, believe it or not, was Carlos Dunlap. Some people may have forgotten him already, but Carlos Dunlap, he did some progress for us in Seattle last 2 years that we had him. I think it was 3. But yeah, between the last 2-3 years, we traded him for a 7th round pick and a center called BJ Finney, who ended up just being a cast-off in the NFL and just retired. Excuse me. Excuse me. And then the last one, notably, which is a guy that I actually kept comparing him to all this time in terms of physical frame, Jadeveon Clowney. Now, here's something interesting about Jadeveon Clowney's deal, is that Houston did want to get rid of him. Clowney wanted to leave. It was we both don't want to be each other. We don't want you here. So that's also why, in some senses, this trade seems like a bargain. But I'm also worried because of the production that Clowney produced in that 1 year. It wasn't exactly pass rushing levels. He was a great run stopper. That was one thing he was good at. He was good at stuffing. He was good at stuffs. Like when they were coming up in the 1st or 2nd yard line and he was able to get a hold of the receiver or even the wide receiver doing some kind of screen, he would stop him. Excuse me. But other than that, he didn't do much. In terms of rushing passers, he didn't do too much. A lot of pressures. I remember he did do a lot of pressures, but no sacks. That's what I'm worried about with Chase Young, is that it might be similar production for what we're trading for. But let me go ahead and tell you what we traded Clowney for. We traded Justin Martin. I don't know if you guys remember him. He was a defensive end. And Bartavius Mingo. I remember he was a 1st round pick, I believe, a long time ago. But I think he's out the league now. And a 3rd round pick. Okay? A 3rd round pick. I understand. These guys were similar draft areas. I think Clowney was also a top 10 draft pick. I know for sure Chase Young was a top 5 draft pick, I believe. Both of them were 1 and 2, I believe. Is that the right price for Chase Young? Unfortunately, a 3rd round pick and 2 scrubs, not really. They're proposing a 2nd round pick and probably a decent player. And we would inquire Chase Young just alone. For me, I kept looking into it. I kept seeing what Washington would agree on, realistically, in my mind, that we would probably have to give more than we would give in a trade, only because of the caliber that Chase Young can be. Now, would I trade for him immediately? No. But I would watch one player and watch him very closely throughout the preseason and maybe the first two games of the season. And that's Devin Bush. Why? Because Devin Bush had an injury very similar to this. He had a torn ACL. It took him nearly 2 years to basically get recovered. Comes here to Seattle and he's already balling out his first year or his first game. And I kind of already knew that he can ball because the guy was first round talent, first round pick. The guy has plenty of starting caliber oozing potential in him. It's just he had a significantly bad injury. And now that he's fully recovered and has the confidence in Seattle, that's the thing I love about Seattle. We bring players confidence no matter what. He's starting to play better. He's starting to shine. Now, if he can fully develop and become the player that Seattle can see in him already after the significant knee injury that he had as well, I think Seattle probably will talk about it and realize, okay, I think we will have to trade for Chase Young. Now, what would I give up for Chase Young? Hear me out, guys. So, after doing a lot of research and doing a lot of numbering, because we also have to understand that we are still $11.3 million under the cap. All right. Chase Young is worth about $12-ish million. Okay. So no, a little more. I think a little more. I think he's like 14 million, but something like that. He's a little bit up there. All right. So here's what I'm proposing. And I think he's like 12 million. He's like right there. I'm trying to remember the over the cap. But here's what I'm proposing. Here's the trade that I'm asking. We're going to give up a third round pick. We're not giving them a second. Whether they want it or not, we're not giving them a second. But there's two players. We're giving them two players. It's going to be somewhat similar to what we gave the Houston Texans. But these players, I do believe, especially one of them, I do believe has more talent than the other. All right? Number one, we're trading Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor has some good in him. He also is a competent pass rusher when he's not rushing himself out of the pocket or when he's pushed out of the pocket, because that always seems to be the case with Darrell Taylor. He just has it all in him, but he just seems to just run his way out of the pocket or is just forced out of the pocket. That's why he didn't get sacks. But because he had a decent year this year, getting 9 sacks, that could be attractive enough for Washington to say, hey, maybe we could pick him up as well. Now, here's the other player I want to mention. Instead of giving up a second round pick or some second round pick and maybe like a fourth round pick, fifth round pick, I'd rather give up this player instead. Even though he would be very good depth for us, it's worth giving up this depth for getting a star player, or in some cases, superstar level player. All right? That's Trey Brown, cornerback. I'm picking him because if you add those two together and a third round pick, you're relieving $7 million. Okay? If we get Chase Young and a fifth round pick, their fifth round pick, and I think that fifth round pick will help compensate a little bit of the Trey Brown that we're giving for Chase Young. That would give us $12 million of inheritance. We would inherit exactly $12 million. All right? Right about $700,000 over the cap. But I think as soon as we bring in Chase Young, if we see some potential in him, I don't think Seattle has no problem running a little bit over the cap, or if they do, they probably would release maybe restructure Nick Bellore, because Nick Bellore has $3 million that we're just paying him. So we could restructure Nick Bellore, maybe scratch $1 million off, and we would be good, and not have to waste other pass catching casualties. But the reason why I'm mentioning Trey Brown is because so far we do have very good depth on corner. We have Tariq Woolen. We have Kobe Bryant if he has to. We have Devin Witherspoon. We have Mike Jackson. And honestly, we also still have like people like Cameron Young, Christian Young, and then I'm trying to think of there's other corners. I'm telling you, we have 5 corners I can name of. And I know Carroll, he can find another 2 more and make them good. That's the thing with Pete Carroll on corners. We can turn them great. Look at DJ Reed. He's a stud now in the Jets. And now they're expected to go to the Super Bowl. Exactly. You see what I mean? So I don't mind Trey Brown getting traded along with Dale Taylor and a 3rd round pick. If Dale Taylor does have a monster season as he gets traded for the Commanders, okay, good for him. Whatever. That's our loss. Either or, we're not going to pay him. I would rather pay Chase Young than Daryl Taylor. And I'm sorry, also Trey Brown, if I also have already 4 corners I can rely on easily. So you see what I mean? Trey Brown is a casualty that I'd rather trade. And he'd be a good addition. So, all in all, if we do trade for Young, and Young is traded, what does he want? What do we command? So far, the top 3 of the best, of the highest paid is, of course, Myles Garrett, 25 million. We have Max Crosby, 23.5 million. And then 21 million. Who was the other guy? I think it was Bosa. But anyway, I have to go back and remember those. But I know those 2 were by far the highest paid. Crosby and Garrett. Now, right now, I think he is getting paid roughly about 10 million, because with the 5th round pick, I think that adds about 2 million to it. So, if we do give him 3-year extension, in my opinion, I feel comfortable giving him bare minimum base level 16 million. All right, 16 million. With incentives, heavy incentives, up to 23 million. So if he works his ass off and gets maybe 12 sacks, he can literally be paid the 2nd highest player in the league in terms of signing bonuses or in terms of incentive bonuses. And I think we can have it in him to do that. Say the first year he's 16 million, 7 year. The 2nd year in, he'll probably get paid 18 million. The next year, it'll go up and up and up. But I'm just saying, that's what I want. Is that the base would probably be 16 to 18, because 16 to 18 is max, no matter what. But the incentives will go up to 23 to even 24. I want it to be a very heavily incentive deal, and at minimum 3 years. And the reason why I also am saying 3 years is because we have Draymond Jones for 3 years. And they're both teammates. So maybe they can ride it along the ship together, since they both feel like they're in the same, timeline. And also, this would also help Chase Young, since we have such a rotational defensive end group with Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, and others, man. Like even put Joey Ferguson, Levi Bell, that I was mentioning in well, not Joey Ferguson, but Levi Bell in the class. But in any event, you see what I mean. There's a lot of depth in the defensive end room, so I can see Chase Young being fresh for a couple of years, or in some cases at least be fresh this coming year, and then next year be so dominant for us in Seattle. All right? So, in conclusion, do I think this is worth the trade? If I'm trading him for what I propose, which is Daryl Taylor and Trey Brown in a 3rd, and I receive a 5th and Young, yes, I do think it's worth it. I think it's honestly worth it. And since we're going to be having more money down the line, since we're going to free up more money in terms of Tyler Lockett's contract, unfortunately, and of course the safeties contracts, unfortunately, there is money that can be given to the defensive line. All right. So in any event, I hope you guys enjoyed my opinion on this. I do think that this would be a good trade for Seattle. I don't think this would be as significant of a difference as if we got DeForest Buckner. But if we did get this trade, and this trade would work similar to how Devin Bush is performing now, then this trade would be significantly the edge that we would need for us to be able to transcend to the playoffs and beyond. Because it upgrades our defense significantly. And that's the thing that's been worrying me the most is our defense the last few years. If we can upgrade our defense, I'm going to be solid with that. Because I have faith in Geno. I have faith in our offense. I have faith in the running game. All right? So, do I want to trade? Do I want this trade? Yes. Is this trade possible? Yes. Should we do this trade? Yes. All this is yes. Will Seattle do it? I don't know. That's tough because we have such a deep defensive end group. It's more viable that they would get not Draymond Jones. It's more viable that they would get DeForest Buckner than Chase Young. But is Chase Young worth trading for? Yes, that's the bottom line. He is worth trading for. But I don't see him being the first candidate for them to be traded for. I think DeForest Buckner is still their number one candidate that they should trade for no matter what. All right, guys? But in any event, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening. You guys have been great. Please like and subscribe. Comment if you want to comment. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm right. Tell me what you like. Tell me if you have any ideas as well. In any event, thank you very much.